Sota Daf Beis Amud Aleph Beshirt, both in first and second marriages. Ein mezavgin lo laadam isha ela lefi ma'asav. Masechta Nazir ended with an interesting discussion about whether the person who starts a brocha is doing the bigger mitzvah, or the person who says Amen is doing the bigger mitzvah. Is starting something the bigger mitzvah, or is ending something the bigger mitzvah? And it's a beautiful way to end the Masechta and start another Masechta. There's greatness in ending something and getting to the end of Masechta Nazir, and there's greatness in starting Masechta Sota, which we're doing today. There's so much, even on the first Omud of Masechta Sota, there's so much that we could work on and talk about and explore. The very first word, the Hamekanei liishto, when a person warns his wife not to hang out with a particular individual, which leads into the whole process of Sota afterwards, just the very use of the word mekanei, which comes from kina, which is jealousy. What does that mean? Why is that the word that the Mishnah uses and the Torah uses for the idea of Sota? The big elephant in the room, certainly for modern people in Masechta Sota, is why is a Sota only a woman? And what happens if a woman says to a man, I don't want you hanging out with that woman? And he does. Why doesn't he become a sot if not a Sota? Why is Sota any this? That's, nobody talks about that, but that's the question modern people certainly would have in their minds. And hopefully we'll get to looking at that a little bit tomorrow on Daf Gimel, when we look more at this word of mekaneh. But today we're going to learn an amazing maharsha, which is really an important piece in understanding how shidduchim work, how Beshirt works. It's just a wonderful piece of maharsha. Bear in mind the maharsha, Reb Shmuel Eidlis, lived in early 16th century, so he overlaps with the Mechaber and the Ramah. He's an early Achron, which makes him difficult to understand because his words are dense, and also makes him extremely authoritative. The maharsha people aren't learning a whole lot today because everybody's so keen to turn the page and to do the daf. Whereas to learn one maharsha can take a few hours. It's not the kind of thing people are doing, but it should be. The Chazon Ish said, through the maharsha, you know whether you're learning, especially Tosfos, you know whether you're on track or not. If the maharsha asks a question and you didn't have the question, or you don't understand what he's asking, then you don't understand the Tosfos. So maharsha is really important. In the Yeshivat Porat Yosef, the Sfardish yeshiva, it's been a tradition for a long time, I'm not sure if it still is, that they learn Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, maharsha. That's the order of learning. That's how important the maharsha is. And the maharsha wrote two pieces, the Chidushei Agadot and the Chidushei Halachot. He wrote on the halachic parts of the Gemara and the midrashic parts of the Gemara, and the maharsha of today is on the midrashic part of the Gemara. It's based on a posuk in Tehillim, in the 5th Shir HaMa'alos, Perek Kuf Kaf Hei. Ki lo yanuach shevet haresha al goral hatzadikim. Hashem will not allow the group of wicked people to be part of the lot of the righteous people. The man lo yishluchu hatzadikim ba'avlata yedehem, so that the tzadikim, righteous people, don't send their hand out to deal in the areas of crookedness and evil. Hitiva Hashem latovim. Hashem does good to the good. V'layishorim belibotam, and to those who are straight in their hearts. V'hamatim akalkulutam. But those that tend towards crookedness, yolichem Hashem et poalei ha'avin. Hashem will lead them together with the wicked people. Shalom al Yisrael, and then Yisrael. Here, Shalom al Yisrael is a famous phrase we use all the time. This is where it comes from, David HaMelech, Shalom al Yisrael, and then it'll be good for Yisrael. And in these few psukim is the whole philosophy of why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. There's a fortune of important chokhmah in these words of Tehillim. Rashi says, there's a difference between the way Rashi learns and the Metzudos. Rashi says, Ki lo yanuach shevet haresha al goral hatzadikim, means that the Rebbeinu Shalom will not allow the Rishoyim to prosper forever, Leman ki tzadikim nizarim milishloach yedayim ba'avla, because the tzadikim are so careful not to do evil things. You need to know ultimately the tzadikim will win. This is only a temporary thing that we're seeing the Rishoyim doing well. Since the tzadikim continue with their tzidkut, they continue with their righteousness, ultimately they will prevail and the Rishoyim will disappear. The Metzudos learns it different. It can happen that for a period of time, the wicked people are on top. That happens. Good things happen to bad people. But it doesn't persist. ultimately it doesn't work out. Why? Hashem doesn't want the tzaddikim to say, why is it that the Rishonim are having such a good time? Clearly we're doing something wrong. And they will start to emulate the ways of the Rishonim. So as to not allow that to happen, the Ribbono Shel Olam will make sure that if you give it a perspective and time, you will see that the Rishonim don't prevail forever. Ultimately they come down. But those people who tend towards wicked ways, what was al-kalkalut mean? People who seem to be good, but it's really in order to mislead people. They're con men. Sometimes you'll see people who you think are tzaddikim, but they're not really tzaddikim. They're just good con people. Just as in economics and finance you've got con men, so in Yiddishkeit you've got con men. And one just has to know that that's the reality of it. And that Metzudas is important in understanding the Marsha. So Omer Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. I actually prepared a different Matmon for today. But as I started learning the Gemara again this morning, I saw Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, who says, Ki avapatach Reish Lakish besota Omer Hachi. When Reish Lakish started Masechta Sota, this is how he started it. So Reish Lakish would start off in the following way, with these psukim. That's how Reish Lakish, when the yeshiva came together, you can just imagine the scene. We're starting off Masechta Sota. Reish Lakish is the Rosh Yeshiva. Reish Lakish gets up, he doesn't start reading the Mishnah. He starts with the psukim from Tehillim. Ein mezavgin lo laadam asha ela lefi ma'asav. He says you should know. In Masechta Sota we're going to be learning about problematic marriages. We're going to be learning about husbands and wives who are having difficulty in their relationships. And bear in mind, a Sota is not somebody who's decided he wants to divorce his wife. Then you don't go through Sota, you divorce your wife. That's the end of it. You're entitled to divorce your wife if you believe she's having an affair. That's not what Sota is. Sota is a man who wants to keep his wife. He loves his wife. He's just suspicious. He's consumed with jealousy. So the Torah has a mechanism to deal with that. And you should know that ein mezavgin lo laadam asha ela lefi ma'asav. People get the wife they deserve. That a shidduch is according to the ma'asim, according to the way the person is. Rashi explains that and says that it's a tzaddik. A modest woman gets a tzaddik, a woman who's not modest gets a rosha. It's all the fi ma'asav. And he quotes these psukim, and the Marshor, as you will see, says he doesn't just quote the first pasuk. He starts a shevet haresh al goral tzadikim, but he quotes the rest of the pasuk and the next pasuk and the next pasuk. All three psukim, pasuk Gimel, Daled, and Hey. And those three psukim form Reish Lakish's opening of Masechta Sota. How does it work? It says the Marsha. Ein mezavgin lo laadam asha shenema ki lo enoch. Nire de darishla miseifa dikra. He's really, it's not on the first words, it's the end of that posuk and the continuation where Reish Lakish develops his whole thesis. The Airi bezivug, which is talking about zivug, it's talking about marriage. Dichtiv leman lo yishlichu tzadikim ba'avlata. It's in the feminine. It doesn't say ba'avla. Rashi in the Metzudah just quietly used the word avla, which means wickedness, but avlata is her wickedness. So clearly we're talking about a relationship between a tzaddik or a man and a woman. The fact that there's a taf there means that we're talking about a relationship involving a woman. Also, as we go further on and we talk about va'ametiv and we talk about hitiva Hashem latovim, that's also a hey, that there's an implication of femininity in that second posuk. This is talking about marriage. It happens, says the Marsha, that a man marries a woman who's not appropriate for him. It's not. Everybody knows what's going on. This is a strange shidduch. Why did he do it? Why is this man marry this woman? Bishvil moment, because she's wealthy. That sometimes happens. Va'amar ki bevada HaKadosh Baruch Hu izdaveg lo ota lefi ma'asav. And when people say to him, really, it's pas nicht, you're marrying this girl. How come? What have you got in common with her? And he says, no, it's b'shet. We met, we fell in love with each other. It must be the Ribbono Shel Olam's will. That's the case. No, the Ribbono Shel Olam doesn't let a woman from a bad family marry a tzaddik. He doesn't allow that. Hagunim bezivug laman lo yishlichu tzadikim yedehem ba'avlata. So that these tzaddikim won't be pulled in to the negative influences of this family of the woman. Mitzad mishpachta she'ena haguna v'amar, aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu mezaveg hitiva Hashem latovim. Hashem makes sure that good women come to good men. Dahainu isha tova letovim v'liyesharim. Dahainu haguna lahagun. That's what it means. Haguna lahagun. Somebody who's appropriate goes to somebody who's appropriate. V'amar, and the pasuk goes on to say, this is all part of Reish Lakish's talk. The Maharsha just expands. He gives us an idea of what Reish Lakish taught his Talmudim on this first day of Masechta Sota. Al titama be'im tireh lefi da'atcha she'ish tov ve'yashar nosei isha she'ena aguna. Don't be all upset if you come across cases where you see a man who's clearly a good man, he sits in kollel, sits in yeshiva, is a tzaddik, and he marries a very inappropriate woman. Don't be so surprised about that, because look at the next pasuk. Hashem gives the right and appropriate woman to a man who's a tzaddik in his heart. His interiority is one of tzidkut, not the exteriority. You're only looking at the outside. You see he's got a long beard, he's got a long coat, he's got long tzitzis, he says Baruch Hashem and Mirza Hashem, he learns Daf Yomi, so you assume he's a tzaddik, but do you know what's going on in his heart? You don't know what his real being is. And therefore, if you see a man who's married a bad woman, even if he looks good to the outside, you can know that he's not a good human being inside. That's how you can tell. Because if he was a good human being inside, that wouldn't happen. There's a caveat to all of this, by the way, so hang on till the end. And that's the third pasuk, which the Metzudah says means that on the outside they're tzaddikim, but that's only to mislead people. On the inside they're not. Such people Hashem attracts to bad wives, to bad women. Yolichem Hashem et po'alei havin. He leads them to families that are not good families. Hader Shamru vayelech Esav el Yishmael. The Gemara in Bava Kama talks about Esav goes to Yishmael to find a wife. Why does he go to Yishmael? Look where Avram sent Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak. Look where Yaakov goes to find a wife. Esav goes to Yishmael. Why does he do that? Lo lechinam alach zarzir etzel orev. The Bava Kama brings the shita of Rabbi Eliezer in Chulin, where Rabbi Eliezer says a zarzir is not a kosher bird because it hangs out with oirvim. What is an oirv? A raven, a crow. So although it looks like it's a kosher bird, but you can see from where it hangs out that it's part of that group. And it says the same about Esav hangs out with Yishmael. People hang out with like people. But it's not only in terms of people hanging out with others who look like them. That's one thing. Do people hang out? Black people with black people, white people with white people, men with men, women with... Maybe. But what's more important, according to the Gemara, is that's not what grouping is about and diversity is about. It's people hang out with people who share their values. People hang out with people who not who look like them, but who see like them. Esav and Yishmael see the world in a similar way. They might not look the same. Esav is European and Yishmael is Arabic, but they see the world the same way. They see the Jewish people the same way. So they hang out together. The Urev and the Zarzir, they don't look the same, but they see the world the same, so they're both not kosher birds. Shalom al Yisrael shiyu kulam agunim v'tovim, va'az yeh lahem shalom. And now it will be a good for Yisrael because everybody will be in a good place. If you see two families fighting with one another, imagine such a thing. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Two Jewish families that are faribel, they're fighting with one another. Says the Maharsha, based on the Gemara there, you know that pasul yesh be'echad mehen. There's a pasul in one of them. There's a problem with the yichus in one of those two families. Ve'in menichin oto lidabek zu bezu. And Hashem keeps these families separate because there's somebody good in the one family and there's badness in the other family, and Hashem doesn't want them to marry each other. So he causes conflict between these two families so that they don't come together. It's the whole dynamics of family. This Maharsha, one could imagine, we could have a week of workshops, of relationship workshops on this Maharsha and what the Maharsha means and and how it goes. What the caveat is, the Gemara goes on and says, we've got it on the next page of the sources. You know this Gemara, and it's as hard to bring them together as Kriyas Yamsuf. And why Kriyas Yamsuf? The Rishonim say different reasons, but one of the reasons is with Kriyas Yamsuf, some die and some live. There are winners and losers in Kriyas Yamsuf. The Egyptians died, the Jews won. And here too, why does it say that it's as hard for the Ribono Shel Olam to bring them together, and that he does it al pi ma'asim? He brings people together by virtue of their deeds and in an appropriate way. Didn't we say that 40 days before a child is born, when nobody even knows whether he'll be a tzaddik or a rasha, already there's a bat kol that says who he's going to marry? So it can't be lefi ma'asim. Ask the Gemara, how can you say that men and women come together according to their level of yiras shamayim? That's their own choice. But before they make those choices, Hashem has already made decisions about who's going to marry who. Answers the Gemara, Lo kashya b'zivug rishon ha b'zivug sheni. Says Rashi, zivug rishon is lefi hamazal. The first marriage, if one of the two people is either the husband or the wife is a first marriage, that's mazel. And you might remember a shiur I gave a while back on the beautiful Tiferes Yisrael on the meaning of mazel from the word nozel. Just as streams come from all over the countryside, and they join up and they come together, and eventually they flow into the lake. So the water in the lake comes from the merging of all these thousands of streams from all over the place and rain from all over the place. So mazel is the merging of streams, of coincidences, of people meeting each other. That's the mazel. This is where it happens in a zivug rishon. But a zivug sheni is lefi ma'asim. V'kol shelazavgan lefi she'enu bat zugo. It's hard, so to say, for the Ribono Shel Olam to bring a second marriage together because it's not natural. The first one is natural. They come together because of mazel. They lived in the same area. The parents met each other. They met each other at college. Things happen and people meet each other. But the zivug sheni is not natural. The zivug sheni Hashem brings together because the two people really fit one another. They really are appropriate for one another. So this whole marshor is really working only on second marriage. Not on first marriage. The first marriage follows a different principle. And today that there are second marriages are much more frequent, it's an important marshor to know and to understand what the basis is of those relationships, the degree to which it's random, the degree to which it's bashirt, the idea of lefi ma'asav and what lefi ma'asav means, and how the Ribono Shel Olam works with the family dynamics to bring people together and to keep people apart.